Hi, just this thought, me and my brother just decided to do a quick video about, I guess, our journeys from Arminian theology to Calvinism or Reformed theology. My story kind of begins in, I guess, from 2009. I got saved on 31st of December 2009, so I guess right at the end of the year. And the main people, I guess, who were really teaching me in my lives about theology and about the Bible would be my older brother and my cousin. So through them, I got to, I guess, learn about certain aspects of the Bible and about God. And something that, I guess, came through very clear from the beginning was that free will and having a free choice to believe in Jesus and to walk according to God's will was to believe that we in and of ourselves made that choice. So I came early to come to a kind of position where I was the one who on that 31st of December made that personal choice to believe in Jesus Christ, and that it was just me. And now I know that that was holding to what's called monergism, and that it's a belief that I myself was the reason why I got saved. So if I guess skip a couple years forward, maybe 2011, the only people I would listen to on YouTube or through other sermon things would be people who held on to Calvinist doctrine. And I found this, I guess, quite weird that even though I held quite close to Arminian theology in certain aspects, I personally believed that total depravity was a reality, that people are sinful and that we're born sinful. And then I also believed that I couldn't personally, or anybody else I knew couldn't personally lose their salvation, and that if they did, they weren't Christians themselves. So I remember in 2011 when I went to university, I bumped into someone actually on the way to do some shopping, and something he said to me is, "Oh, you should definitely come to my church. It's really important to get stuck into a church when you get to university. Otherwise, some people get to university and they lose their salvation." And straight away I was like, well, if we believe in what it says in 1 John 1:19, I believe, 1 John 1:19, that they've gone out from us but they weren't among us. And I held very dearly to verses such as that, because I believed that the work God had done in my heart couldn't be changed. I no longer wanted to go to the world, let alone live according to the standards of the world, and no longer to God's standards. So the people I listened to on YouTube, on these sermon things, were people who preached those kind of doctrines that I believed in. And other people who did preach Arminian theology always had some kind of flaw in what they believed. It would be such as just certain things about how our words have certain power, or how positive thinking can improve our day and things like this. And I knew from reading the scriptures that these things just weren't true and didn't hold water. So I'd listen to people such as James White, Body Bacan, Paul Washer, who I later found out all held to Calvinist doctrine or Reformed theology. So going on further, I guess me and my brothers almost had a little parade of whenever we met someone who held on to Calvinist theology, we would bombard them with the questions such as, how can we not have a personal choice? How can you view human beings as just robots? How can we not have a choice to believe in Jesus and to be saved? And something I guess I slowly began to realize is my objections weren't being really answered to an adequate way that I thought they should be answered. So whenever I'd ask someone, according to 1 Corinthians 13, it says that God is love, and all these are the attributes of love, and how can God be loving if he doesn't save everybody, or people don't have a choice to believe in him? And the answers I got, I thought personally didn't hold up, or I couldn't truly believe in them, because I just thought, well, it doesn't answer the question. If God is love, then why is that the case? And they would say, well, look at this and look at this, but they wouldn't directly deal with the questions that I had. However, once my brother came to embrace Calvinism, and I saw it on Facebook, I was like, oh no, they've got him. And then I found out my younger brother, I think, me and my younger brother and my older brother were still in London, and they would of course be meeting up more regularly. I found out he also came to embrace it as well, so I was like, oh no, I'm the only one left. I've got to, maybe keep holding it and maybe even convince my brother that, he's got it wrong. But there was this one message he posted up on Facebook by Body Bakan, and I was like, okay, I'll give it a listen. It was a Friday night. I'd done my work, and I had the weekend to get ready for my tutorials. So I said, okay, I'm going to have a listen to this. And whilst I was listening to it, I began to realise that the things Body Bakan was saying wasn't in line with Romans 9, was exactly what I held on to. So, and that was a view of monolithism, that believing God knows what's going to happen but doesn't actually have control over what's going to happen. And he showed me that just doesn't match up with what it says in Romans 9, that God himself is the potter. He has the power to make the clay for glory, vessels for glory and vessels for wrath, and he is the one that is in control and not merely sees what's going to happen but actually causes what's going to happen. And he went on to talk about the elect and what the doctrine of election actually is. And at the end of the message, I decided to go on Blue Letter Bible and actually look at these words in their Greek and see what their original meanings were. And that's when I discovered that elect meant to choose, and that it was an act, and it was a positive act. And I was like, I can't argue against what it says in the Bible. I can't argue with the fact that God calls these people an elect, and the meaning means people that he has chosen himself. So I kept reading on, I kept looking into the words, and I was like, I've got to embrace this, because it's clearly the truth and it's clearly what's in line with Scripture. So after doing that, I actually began to even understand more about things that I had held onto and how they were incompatible with my Arminian theology. For example, the very doctrine of grace is that we, in and of ourselves, have nothing to merit our salvation. Now, if we're able to, as free-thinking beings, choose God, then there's something that we are able to do ourselves. However, salvation being by grace, which is all over the New Testament, Ephesians 2, just to name one, shows that it has to be something that's not of ourselves, and therefore it's something of God. And it's not of any goodness that is inside us, but according to his will and his grace. So that was just one aspect. I became to see how my version of sovereignty, or of how God is sovereign, was also not compatible with the Bible, because if God is sovereign, that means he's able to be in control, that he's in charge, that he knows the beginning from the end. He knows, he has known from eternity what is going to happen on this earth, and not only what's going to happen, but he's the one that's in control of what's going to happen. I began to realize that the God I served as an Arminian was such a small God who's limited by so many aspects of human, thinking. Whether the God of the Bible is a big God, he's in control, he's powerful, he's all-powerful, and that he is in control not only of what's going to happen when I roll a dice, but of my very salvation and the salvation of others. So I guess that was a brief outline of my journey from Arminian theology to Calvinism. And I guess as I embraced Calvinism, I began to meet people who was in a similar position to me, and I would go through verses like John 6 and say, how can Jesus say only those can come to him who his Father draws? And they themselves wouldn't be able to answer it correctly. They would have to wiggle through and try and do something with semantics and change the meaning of certain words to try and justify it. But when you truly understand that it's God who saves, and that it's through his grace, and that he is sovereign, you begin to understand the Scriptures so much more. You begin to understand not only the New Testament, but also the Old Testament, and the character of God. You get the full counsel of God when you truly embrace Reformed theology. So I know many of you maybe are watching this and you're going to hit the thumbs down button. And I can't blame you. But in my past, I would have probably done the same. But all I can say is, read the scriptures and truly ask yourself, like I did, what do these words mean? What does it mean in its original language when it says that God elects people? What does it mean that God draws people onto himself? What does it mean that no one can come unless the Father draws him? What does it mean when it says in Romans 9 that God is the potter and he has control of the clay? What does it mean in Ephesians 1 when God says, I knew from eternity past, or from the foundation of creation, those who would be his? So I'll just say, you've got to really question yourself, see if what you believe is in line with scriptures, and come to a decision on that basis. God bless.